Welcome to the Grow My Salon Business podcast, where we focus on the business side of hairdressing. I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker, and I'll be talking to thought leaders in the hairdressing industry, discussing insightful, provocative, and inspiring ideas that matter. So get ready to learn, get ready to be challenged, get ready to be inspired, and most importantly, get ready to grow your salon business. Hey, it's Anthony Whitaker here, and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. Today is the third and the final in a series of podcasts that I've been doing where I'm talking with people that represent the trade media. I always find that the media representatives have a really interesting insight into what's going on in the world of hair and beauty, and many of them also have a multi-purpose role of not just being publishers of magazines, but also in facilitating awards and various other industry events. In episode 173, which was the final episode of 2022, I spoke with Stacey Sobel from Salon Today to get a North American perspective. In episode 175, I spoke with Linda Woodhead, owner of the Mocha Group, which is a publisher of magazines and a facilitator of events and awards in the Australian hair, beauty and barbering space. And today I'm speaking with Jayne Lewis-Orr to get the UK perspective. Now, Jayne is the Executive Director of the Professional Beauty Group in the UK, which, amongst other things, publish the Hairdressers Journal, as well as facilitating Salon International and hosting the British Hairdressing Awards. Now, in today's podcast, we will discuss how the role of the hair and beauty media has evolved over the last few years from a UK perspective, the impact that the internet and social media have had on traditional print media, and how Jayne sees the future of industry events and awards, and lots more. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jayne Lewis-Orr.
Hi, Anthony. It's so good to be here, and thank you so much for asking me. I'm truly honoured. Thank you.
No, it's a real pleasure. I've been really looking forward to talking to you. I know you're very busy, as you know, as all of us are. But you know, media people often, have a lot on their plate, and I know that you certainly do. So, thanks for joining me here today. Jayne, let's start off with what I do with most of my guests, which is I pretty much get them to introduce themselves by, giving an overview of who they are. So who is Jayne Lewis-Orr? Give us your sort of 2-minute backstory for our international audience who perhaps aren't familiar with who you are and how you got into this industry and exactly what you do.
Okay, so I would start that by saying I'm a mum of twins, of 21-year-old boys. And as far as the industries are concerned, I've been in them an extraordinarily long time, which obviously makes me very old. And as we were just having a laugh just now, it started literally as computers were coming online and the world was changing and we were starting to know what the internet was. So I've worked on Hairdressers Journal and on a different beauty title for very many years, so actually 36 years. But took responsibility for Hairdressers Journal. So this is my 25th, this is my silver jubilee year, I suppose. Took responsibility for Hairdressers Journal, Salon International, British Hairdressing Awards, etc. 25 years ago. And what I'm truly humbled about is that actually I've been able to do every job on the way up. So I started off as an editorial assistant. I became the content writer, I became features writer, features editor, deputy editor, group editor, publisher director, and then executive director. So I kind of now have a commercial overview as well as content, but content is still where my heart is. Okay. And very much hair focused, even though under the Professional Beauty Group here, obviously we have professional beauty, aesthetic medicine, world spa and wellness. I've retained the kind of focus on hair, but it has been lovely because in the last 7 years since coming over here, I've been able to get back to I started on beauty. So to get back to those beauty clients that many of them are still there, very much like the hair industry. And actually, I feel honoured that I work in an industry where the people are genuinely friends. And I know there's a number of people that if I wasn't doing this job anymore, they would still be my friends. They came to my wedding. Yeah. They're with you, as we always say about our hairdressers, they're with you with the good times and the bad times. Yeah. And it's just been brilliant to be part of something that's so much fun, but has such great people in it. And I genuinely mean that. I still get excited about going to the British Hairdressing Awards and seeing everybody, catching up, finding out what they've been doing, and just, celebrating what is, I think, and I think everybody should think is an absolutely phenomenal craft.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if that kind of summed it up, but
No, that
as
does.
you can
It
tell, I
does.
love it.
Did you start out as a journalist? Was that your original sort of foray into the
Yeah,
industry?
it was.
Okay.
It was. So I actually, I didn't want to go, a very different when I left school. I could have gone to university and had the opportunity to go to university, but actually I almost wanted to do it as an apprenticeship, and wanted to start working straight away. And I was very fortunate that the company that previously owned Hairdressers Journal had actually used to train journalists from every company. So I went through their training program, became an accredited journalist, did all of the but whilst working on the group at the same time. So in effect, I was pretty much like doing a hair or beauty apprenticeship. I was doing the day job and doing the studying and marrying the two together. So I started writing new products and then small features and then event reports and, you know, those kind of things. So yeah, absolutely. I'm a journalist by trade. And then it's been in the latter years, I suppose, but it's been a while. So since '97, I've had a more commercial overview of the business, but still very much with a heart in actually reading the content.
Yeah.
But obviously it's changed very much from when I started. We had a weekly hair magazine and we had a monthly beauty magazine. Now we have monthly magazines, but obviously nobody waits for anything anymore. So it's the social channels, it's the digital channels, it's all that kind of immediacy that's been such a big shift, and then everyone's had to adapt.
You know, before we started recording, we were laughing about, you know, early memories of, I was telling you when I, you know, used to go to the newsagents on the way to work every Friday morning, and I'd buy the Hairdressers Journal, and I can't remember how much it cost, but it was pennies. I think it was like 12 pence, you know, so that makes me sound old. And then of course you piped up and said that when you started, you weren't even using a computer, you're using a typewriter. And that's incredible, because, you know, hairdressers, we're always talking about, oh my God, the world is changing, hairdressing is changing, the business model's changing, you know, everything's changing. But when you look at the changes that media have gone through, it is really quite phenomenal. You know, like when you look at the technology, I mean, it used to be you published a magazine. Now it's a magazine, it's events, it's digital, it's awards. There's so many sort of arms to it. So you know, it's incredible, basically, the upheaval that you have gone through in your career, and the involvement that you've had, you know, from a journalist right through to the position now. I just alluded to the fact that I used to get a weekly magazine. I'm not sure if you said this before, but obviously it's no longer weekly. How many issues a year now?
So Hairdressers Journal is 12 issues a year. So we went to monthly, and you know, it's funny, I still see people and have the odd email from people saying, I still miss going to the newsagents and picking it up every Friday morning. But you're right. I think media, it's not even the same set of skills that we trained with anymore. I mean, hairdressing absolutely is changing and technology moves, but you still use the functional skills you learned when you were an apprentice or you went to college. With media, you know, when I did my media training, my journalistic training, it was about writing, proofing, you know, the kind of fundamental skills. Social media hadn't been invented, so writing captions and, you know, clickbait content, and those words didn't exist. So it's kind of, you just have to continually learn. And, you know, and I don't profess to being, you know, the best on social media. I absolutely have a go, much to my boys' absolute disgust. I have a TikTok account. I mainly got a TikTok account because Hairdressers Journal have a TikTok account, so I can see what's happening. But you have to keep going, because the world's not going to stand still. You have to move with it. And the move from weekly to monthly, you know, that was a really tough call. It was 100 and something years. I can't remember how many years it was, 130 years or something, of a weekly publication. And, you know, it's a big call to do that. But absolutely, it was the right decision, because the world is digesting their media in a very different way. And people used to wait for the issue on a Friday to find out who'd won British Hairdresser of the Year on the Monday. That doesn't happen anymore. You know, the moment I say those words, it is on social media. Everybody knows. No one's going to wait 5 days to find out who's won if they're not there on the night. And you have to adapt. It's about, you know, and that's the same in hairdressing, isn't it? You've got to be able to adapt and move and change with the times, and actually serve the needs of your readers, users, visitors, whatever. And that's the thing for us. It's about making sure that we're relevant and using the right channels. And there are different channels for different content.
Yeah, sure.
So
I just want to back up. You just said something that has shocked me. Did you say 130 years?
Oh no, Hairdressers Journal is, oh God, you're going to get me 18. I'm going to come back to that and tell you what it is. But it is, we had an anniversary. Was it 150 years last year? See, that's me being old. So either 145, 150 years old. Yeah, it's
Unbelievable.
old.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah,
obviously that is the longest running trade magazine in the hairdressing industry.
And I think it's not just in hairdressing. I think we got a letter from the Queen on our 125 years. I think we might be the oldest, we certainly were, as far as we knew, the oldest trade magazine still in existence.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I mean, I feel 1882. There you go.
Okay.
So we were.
I'm not going to do the maths. Yeah. That's a long time.
It's
ago.
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I just want to clarify, I haven't done them all before any.
Yeah.
For anyone pipes up, sometimes it feels like it, but I haven't done them all. But 1882.
Yeah. What incredible staying power that is with multiple
think
owners.
Back
obviously.
to that. Yeah, of course. But May the 6th, 1882. And if you think back, that was before photographs. So everything was hand drawn. And we've got the original copy. We've got some of the original copies. Yeah. And it is just fascinating.
Yeah. It
really is.
When you used to do a weekly magazine, trying to get the content for that together and printed and out there every week, that's a huge call. I mean, I can imagine a monthly magazine is a huge call, but weekly would have just been, a lot of pressure all the time.
It's funny you say that, because actually, in a sense, obviously it is. If you're producing a weekly, you're never short of information. This industry is never short of news stories, great images, ideas, inspiration. So there's always plenty to talk about and plenty to write about. In some ways, it's no different now. If not, it's harder now, in the sense that you're having to produce content 24/7, because the world doesn't wait anymore. Nobody waits for anything. So you have to be first with the news, first with everything. So it's not a case of being able to say, oh, well, that will wait and go in Friday's issue, or we'll plan that for 2 Fridays. It needs to go now. It needs to go on the right channel. And because of social media, which has many, many brilliant advantages, it does mean that you are constantly accessible. And sometimes if you don't respond immediately, people don't take into account that it might be a Sunday at 2 a.m. UK time. They still want a response. Well, clearly, I mean, we respond as quickly as we can. But the news has to be instant. Do you know what I mean? So whilst it was a pressure get putting together the weekly, we always knew what the dates were. You worked to those dates. You very quickly get in the mindset of, this is what we need to produce by when. And now that's all gone out the window. There's no schedule. It's just as it happens, you've got to do it. And there's a lot of it. And also, to keep yourself current and relevant, you have to be doing it all the time.
Yeah. Now,
you can't wait.
Yeah. Obviously, when you took that decision from a weekly magazine to a monthly magazine, a lot of people and a lot of other magazines and other industries have either faded away completely, or they've just become less and less copies, less and less frequent. Do you foresee a day, where there won't be a printed version of the magazine and it'll just be a digital thing?
I certainly don't at the moment. The demand for print is still really high. Even in the pandemic, there was only 1 month when we didn't publish a print issue. And the reason we didn't, and I think it was probably May 2020, was because obviously the world shut down at the end of March. Our May issue would have been going to print in the middle of April. And we weren't actually sure whether printers were going to be allowed to go into print. Post was going to still be delivered, because none of us knew, did they? I mean, it was something that nobody had lived through or experienced. So we did one digital issue only, and then we went straight back to print. What we did do was then open the digital edition to everybody. So we sent it out to everybody. We made it available to everybody. I was conscious that often with Hairdressers Journal, it goes to the salon, it goes in the staff room, and everybody reads it. So our readers per copy is really high. And obviously no one was in the salon, no one was allowed to be together. So actually we opened it so that I could send it to you if you were running a salon, and you could send it to everyone that you work with, just to keep people up to date. But actually, I suppose what the pandemic did, we had to pivot very quickly. And then we began to do lives every day. And that the response to that still to this day, even though the pandemic is fading into a memory, is so lovely. Because when you go out, at Salon in October just gone, I had people coming up to me saying, we're so grateful that you kept going and you kept the content coming and you kept talking to us and having people on so that we didn't feel alone. Because running a business is a lonely place at times. Running a business in a pandemic was terrifying because nobody knew what tomorrow was going to bring. And actually having people on who could share the fact that they were in the same struggle, whether they were British Hairdresser of the Year, a smaller salon in wherever. Do you know what I mean? So it just meant that it really fostered that community. And I think one thing hairdressing is a phenomenal community. They support each other. And you found people were openly supporting each other on social, via the chats, on the lives that we were doing. And actually, even on the lives, people were asking questions live. And I think it just made everybody accessible and just a little bit reassured, in a time when none of us knew what the next day was going to bring, let alone the next week, month or year.
Yeah. Well, what is, I think one of the things, as you know, I've spoken to Stacey Sobel at Salon Today, and I've spoken to Linda Woodhead from Mocha in Australia. And I think one of the things that makes Hairdressers Journal different to them is that I'm under the impression, tell me if I'm wrong, that it has a more global reach. Because when I first started hairdressing in 1978, I was in New Zealand. We used to get the English Hairdressers Journal. When I had my salons in Australia in the 90s, we got the Hairdressers Journal. What sort of global reach do you have?
Yeah, we do still have a global reach, probably less so with a print publication now, because people tend to, if it's overseas, they want to get it digitally because it's much quicker. It's, when it publishes in the UK, they get it straight away. They're not waiting 3 weeks for post in Australia, and no post at all in the UK. So if anyone overseas is watching this, the UK is literally falling apart at the minute. I mean, I got a Christmas card yesterday that was sent on the 12th of December, only taking them a month. Only came about 10 miles as well. So it wasn't like it was an international delivery. So we encourage people not to take a print version internationally because of that time delay and the cost, and actually, but to do the digital. And if we look at our stats on everything from our social channels to the actual website to Salon International, the reach is vast. People are, and I think also because we have some within the Hairdressers Journal stable, we have some iconic brands of their own. So people follow the British Hairdressing Awards because they want to know who's won. They want to see the work. And the same with Salon. I mean, you were talking about people watching this podcast from around the world. We get the list of the countries that people have attended from, and I'm fascinated because I'm looking up where it is because it's places I've not even heard of. But they travel far and wide because I think it's one of those, if you create something that has the appeal and has the right people and the right education, the right inspiration and the right content, people will come. And I think fortunately UK hairdressing is still is held in very high regard and esteem worldwide, and people still want to see the artists and the teams that were born in the UK and make British hairdressing so great.
Well, one of the things that you said before, when I had my salons, which is quite a while ago now, a magazine would arrive, Hairdressers Journal or whatever, and it would be ripped. The envelope would be ripped open. It would be out in the staff room. People would be poring over it. And so what I want to ask you about is, and so I very much had that experience and saw that and lived that and were that person. But today, very different technology, social media. And so
absolutely,
the staff room of today, when I go into different salons and I go into the staff room, they're all looking at their phone. They're all scrolling through, their social media. So what I wanted to ask you about, and I've asked Stacey and Linda the same questions, is that do you think that young hairdressers today have lost interest in magazines because they're so focused on their instant, digital social media platforms that are also totally democratic is the word I'm meaning. They're totally democratic. I can get my work out there. No one's going to choose it or edit it.
Well, people have become brands, haven't they?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Stylists have become brands in their own right through social media. I think to a certain extent, I think reading magazines is a demographic thing. That said, I get to judge, fortunately, lots of industry competitions and magazines, and when you go and they're presenting their mood boards, I recognise the pages that have been ripped out of HJ, the fashion pages that they've used as their inspiration. So I think it depends on the type of hairdresser. It depends on where they, I suppose, what they see as their career journey. But you know, we still have a good reach. I mean, the print magazine is undoubtedly read more by salon owners, senior stylists, and technicians. But it's in the, as you say, it's in the staff room, and people flip through it. I mean, I can remember the days back in when we used to have a big recruitment section in the back, but the salon owner would rip the job section out because they didn't want the teams to see what other people were offering, all the benefits, the salaries, that. Oh yeah. People used to ring up and say, "Can you publish it without the recruitment section?" No, because that's what people have paid to be in. And in those days, you didn't have an online recruitment platform. So I think it is a generational thing. You know, if I look at my own sons, they consume, although actually one of them still absolutely reads New Scientist every week. The print copy comes home, he reads it. If it didn't come home, would he read it online? Yeah, absolutely, because he's interested in it and he'll look at it. So there is a generational divide, I think, on reading magazines. But that said, I think they love particularly the images, and I think that's what many people look for, because we only carry exclusive fashion in HJ. It's not been seen anywhere else, and they want to see that first. And the lovely thing for us is that people still so desperately want to get their work published, which is a lovely testament to us, because we get fantastic work sent in and they want us to run it. Yeah. And it's like, yeah.
Okay, well, again, that's another thing I'm curious about, is that, when I was entering awards and stuff and shooting work and getting it published, etc., there was a lot of recognition, there was a lot of acknowledgement about getting your work in a magazine. Yeah. And so these days you have social media, and you have people with tens or even hundreds of thousands of followers on, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or even Facebook or whatever. And so I often wonder, and this sort of links into talking about awards, that are people that motivated now by awards, and are they that motivated by getting their work published in magazines, when my perspective, or my question, is that I see that a lot of young people now are maybe just not as interested as what they were, they're more interested in the fact that, hey, I published this picture and I got 20,000 likes or something, than it being shown in a magazine. What are your thoughts about that? Am I on to something or not?
I think there will be some people who will absolutely just want to put their work out on social media, and that's fine. But it's interesting, because even if we reshare work, or we do kind of, we'll do a collection of the week, so we'll take one and we use it digitally, they're always really grateful and excited that we published it. We put something up online this week. I had a lovely message from the hairdresser today saying, "Thank you so much for publishing it on your social, on your, on the website and social channel. It means the world to me." So I think people do still care. I think the fortunate thing for Hairdressers Journal, and we never take this for granted, is we have been around such a long time. So it's 140 years. And actually, whether you read it avidly or not, there is a heritage and there's a respect. Now, I never take that for granted, and neither does the team. We work very hard to make sure that we stay front and center, we stay relevant. And as we were talking about before, that you have to pivot to suit the market. If we were still publishing a weekly print magazine only, it wouldn't exist anymore, because that wouldn't be enough for people. You've got to adapt to the times. But I do genuinely think people do still want to get work published, because it's affirmation, isn't it, that you've done something really great. And I suppose I would, in terms of awards, I think that there is no doubt, and I'll be honest, I was worried after the pandemic, because everybody had been hit so hard. Would people still enter the awards, whether that's business awards or the British Hairdressing Awards? And we have record numbers of entries.
Yeah. Wow.
So there is still a passion for it. And I think actually, that when and it's very fresh of mine because we do a long edit of the British Hairdressing Awards, which feels like a lifetime ago, but was actually only 7 weeks ago. When you hear, and there were lots of new names winning this year, which is fab because it's new people and it encourages other people. I think when lots of different people are winning, how much it meant to people to be recognised by their peer group. And I think with that one, we have arguably the world's best hairdressers judge that event. And, it's a brave person that enters awards, isn't it? Because you're putting yourself out there to be judged in a sense. And it's subjective. What you might like, I might hate, and vice versa. So it's a leap of faith to put yourself out there. But actually, I think because they know we're so rigorous about the judging process, the judges are, and they are we have kind of previous British Hairdressers of the Year, Hall of Fame, industry alumni. One of the things we've done is let the current year's winners judge because they feel that's an absolute honour. And I've spoken to many of the groups and focus groups and said, do you think we should do it all online? And they're like, no, coming to that judging day is as good for some of them, but for some of them it's better than the night because they've not got the stress and the nerves because they're just able to interact. And we live in a world that lives very much on screen. People still want face-to-face and that personal connection. And, it means a lot to people that those, not us, because we don't judge, those alumni in that room think that they're worthy of either a finalist or a trophy. That means a lot to people.
Yeah. I can remember the first British Hairdressing Awards at some point in the 80s.
You're one up on me then. Yeah.
And it's evolved a lot since then. I mean, it's big without a doubt. What I was going to ask you was, what is the future? Where do you see awards in 5 years' time? I mean, pandemics, etc., excluded. How do you see the awards evolving? Because they haven't always been there. Maybe they won't always be there, or if they are, they'll be in a different format. Do you have any thoughts as to how do you think awards events might evolve?
We have focus groups, so we don't sit here in our offices and think we know best. We ask the industry and the audience all the time, what do you think of this? It might be smaller focus groups, we might do big surveys, we might do telephone research, actually ringing them and saying, it could be about Salon, could be about the awards, could be about the magazine, could be about content. And we absolutely do it with the British Hairdressing Awards, and we go out to people that have never entered, because there's no... there absolutely is value in asking people that enter all the time and win, but you already know they love the event. So actually the people you also want to talk to are those that never enter. And as a result of that kind of feedback, we've introduced the Trend Image Award. So it's literally one picture. So you don't have to produce a collection. It's one image. It's literally one image that you can produce. Now, it can be part of your British Hairdressing collection, or it can't. You could send one image that you love, that you've shot, and that can get you in for Trend Image. We introduced an international category, which has absolutely taken off. So hairdressers from around the world are competing for that International Collection of the Year title. And we're continually looking at ways to evolve it. And, whether it's... We brought the session category back because when I first started looking after hairdressers, after the British Hairdressing Awards, we had a session category, and actually the way it was being judged meant it became impossible to judge, because rightly the guys didn't want to send their books in to be judged because they need their books with their agents so they can get work booked, and I absolutely understand that. But session hairdressing, and you'll know this, many people want to be a session hairdresser and want to understand how to break into film, television, celebrity, whatever. And actually, for those that are doing it really well, it's a phenomenal craft, and it is very different to those running a commercial salon who might be nominated fish. And it kind of... British was getting a lot of session nominees within it, which was absolutely fine, and still is absolutely fine. We would never change that. The way it works is you are nominated for British Hairdresser of the Year. We don't send a list, or we don't say you need to choose from these people. We ask people to nominate. They nominate 3 individuals each. that forms a long list that goes back out, and then people choose 3. They can keep the same, they can change it, and that forms the list of those that have been nominated. But we did feel that Session Hairdresser of the Year, they don't shoot necessarily a collection in the sense that you and I and your listeners would understand as a collection. You know, they might be shooting a collection for Vogue, they might be doing a cover for something else, they might be doing a record cover, a fashion collection. So we reintroduced Session last year for the first time in probably 20 years. And what we asked was, it was nominated, so it was by nomination, and those that were nominated had to send in their 8 favourite images from the past year. It could have been, it doesn't have to be one collection, it could be a cover for Lancome versus an ad for Adidas versus a celebrity shoot for, you know, the Time supplement, whatever.
Yeah.
And those were the images that were judged. So we continually look, and are genuinely always really open to feedback about what, you know, and the trend image came about because a lady contacted me on Facebook and said, I can't afford to do a collection. I want something that's, I can just send one image in and I'd love to be part of it. And that's how, and initially we did it with an age limit on it because that's what everyone felt they needed. It's not us making the decisions alone. Everybody said, let's put an age, but actually there are other people who want to enter. Why should it have an age limit on it? So anyone can enter it.
Yeah,
you know, Cos, who's current British Hairdresser of the Year, can go for trend image as well if he wants. It's entirely up to him. So
well, the other thing that's changed dramatically is everyone's a photographer now, and some of them are damn good photographers. You know, everyone's got their iPhone, and
incredible.
And the composition and the way they develop their eye to take great photographs. It's amazing what you know young kids do now with the phone. Whereas when I looked at competitions pre-iPhone days, and people took their own photographs, it was like, oh, for God's sake, get yourself a proper photographer and do the job properly.
Yeah.
These days, a lot of people are shooting fantastic images just on their phone, which is impressive.
Yeah, well, the phone cameras are great, and also then it makes it accessible for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You know,
exactly.
you don't have to
have a big budget and a lot of money.
No, and I think there's a misconception that you have to have a big budget to enter awards. I mean, we don't charge, unlike most people, we don't charge anyone to enter. There's no charge to enter. And actually, I know people that have shot and won on a shoot that they pulled together by working with a photographer who was building up a portfolio, a makeup artist who was doing the same, and they went and scouted models.
Yeah, on the street and
put together a great, they street cast models and absolutely nailed it. Because very much the judging, and you can ask any of the judges and they will tell you that I am relentless. It is about the hair. It is a hairdressing competition. It's not about retouching. It's, you know, I mean, obviously the aesthetic is important, but it is about the hair. So, you know, and we will stay true to that. But, you know, we continually ask people what they want in the awards, how they want it to change, what they like, what they don't like. And, you know, nothing's off limits. We will continue in the way that we've talked about the business already. You have to pivot and be agile enough to be able to change and adapt to new ways of working. So we're always looking at what we do next.
Yeah. So tell me about the business awards, because a lot of our listeners probably don't know that it's a completely separate event on a completely different time of the year. And it's still a very significant event in the, you know, British hairdressing calendar. So tell us about the future of them, where they've come from and what they cover.
So we launched the British Hairdressing Business Awards because obviously we had the British Hairdressing Awards, which do and have done and continue to do a fantastic job of championing the craft of hairdressing, so the technical skills that you need to be a great hairdresser. But actually, in real terms, you can't do the craft if you can't run a great business. So, and you know, often there's someone behind the scenes that you may not know who is powering those big businesses on. Do you know what I mean? Those businesses on. So actually, what we wanted to do was recognize and reward the kind of unsung heroes almost of hairdressing. So, you know, the front of house teams, the assistants. I mean, you ask any salon owner, the people they couldn't go into battle with every day without their assistants. Salon managers, business directors. So at every level, we've introduced, and again, adapted, we've introduced social stylist of the year. So it's not just about oh, I post great pictures on my social media. It's how they've grown and developed their business. So they have to give us engagement, conversions, all those kind of things, teams. And it was about recognizing the great business, because I think we still live, unfortunately, and less so now, but, you know, I don't want anybody to say that they're, you know, oh, I'm just a hairdresser. If the pandemic did nothing else, it proved just how valuable hairdressing and the way it makes you feel is to people, not just the way it makes you look.
Yeah.
And to that point, we launched a campaign. I actually announced it at the British Hairdressing Awards, where we're going to be asking in the UK salon owners, stylists, technicians, whoever, to just give up a few hours of their time to go to their local college or their local school and talk to the students about the opportunities that this industry offers, because you and I both know what phenomenal opportunities they are. And I don't ever want anyone to say, well, you shouldn't do hairdressing because anything. You absolutely should do hairdressing, because it can give you a fantastic lifestyle, travel, career freedom like nothing else. And the only thing that limits you in hairdressing, I think, is your own commitment to working hard, continuing to learn, and, you know, just you can live out your best life in hairdressing. You will work hard, but we all work hard, and nothing's for free this life, is it? So exactly. Everyone that wants to be successful is going to work hard. And actually, we want to garner the market support, which that people are coming forward and saying, I absolutely do, to go and talk to the future generations of hairdressers, because we need to make them understand, and their parents understand, what a great opportunity this industry offers for people who want to work hard and, you know, go for it, basically.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is a challenge all over the world.
It is.
You know, it's a hairdressing thing. It's not a UK thing or a US or an Australian thing. It's everywhere, which is a shame.
It's an industry thing.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is that a very, you know, big part of what you do is events, and particularly, I mean, we touched on this before, Salon International, and, you know, pre the internet, if you wanted to find out what the latest products were and, you know, what the latest tools were and see the best, you know, artists, etc., you had to go to these big events. And as soon as the internet came along, it started to change, and events started to evolve, change. They had to. And in a lot of cases, they'd become smaller. What are your thoughts about events? I mean, obviously, COVID sort of really made people, I think people were reassessing events anyway. You know, what's the purpose of them and what are they going to be like? And then COVID has really made people step back and go, okay, what does the future look like in terms of events for both the distributors, for you, for the hairdresser attending? Everyone sort of seems to be reassessing them. So what are your thoughts about those big trade shows, those, you know, big events that they include, the shows, etc., with them? Where do you see that going?
So if you look at trade shows across different sectors, I'm not talking about hair and beauty, and we can plug in through various associations and stuff of what the trends are. There is no doubt that some industries are having a challenge in terms of less people wanting to attend, potentially less exhibitors, and it's harder to get people to attend. Salon last year was, I mean, you know, you can imagine you build these events, and then until you open the doors, as much as we've sold tickets and everyone said they're coming, you know roughly what you're going to expect, till they actually come, it's like, you know, are they going to come? Are they going to come? We know we've done everything, and we've done all the marketing, and we've got a great lineup, and we've, you know, it's all in. But then, you know, I mean, one year we got hit with an incredible storm. Trevor Sorby was due to be on stage, and he was stuck in Europe, couldn't come back, and I'd got 1,500 people sat in a theatre and I had to go on stage and tell him he wasn't coming.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it was just, I mean, it was terrible for Trevor, but it was also not, it was difficult for us because people had travelled from around the world. You know, these things happen, and that's live events. You're right. I think the pandemic did make people reassess. I think we are in an industry that is very tactile. Hairdressing is one of the only crafts where actually the whole time you're with your client, you are touching them pretty much. It's you know, you are in their space. And face to face, actually, I think there was a real demand coming out of the pandemic for people to get back together. I mean, we ran Salon International in October 21. We were one of the first events to run again at Excel London. And, you know, I'll be the first to fess up. I've spent the 3 days frequently in tears because people came up and just said, I don't know you, but we're so glad you've done this, because we wanted to just get back to normal and see people and feel normal. And, you know, you kind of think, well, that's only going to be one show. They're going to want to do that. So, you know, we did 22 and actually the show had grown in size. We were nearly at the pre-pandemic size, not quite. But in terms of visitor numbers, we were delighted. There was still, where we were lower on visitor numbers would be international, and we expected that because there's still, you know, certain areas are still having difficulties and caution about traveling. And actually, I think, you know, we're probably all guilty of this, kind of got out of the habit of traveling. Do you know, because we didn't do it for so long, it was like, well, it was like, I can hand on heart say, in all the years I've worked here, I have never in my working life had 52 weekends at home.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Because I spend a lot of weekends away from home, and it was like, well, this is really odd being at home every weekend. But you did get used to it, and it's amazing that humans just adapt, don't they? But it's great to be back out and doing stuff. And I think it's the same as with all the things we've talked about. You have to give the audience what they want. If you give them what they want, they will come. We've got some big plans for this year, things we're changing, new teams we want to put on board, on stages, different ways of doing the stages. You know, we have focus groups for everything. And one of the things that came up was, we want to see colour work. Well, that's quite a challenge, because watching colour process isn't necessarily the most exciting thing. And it was like, how do we do that? How do we do that in the space? How do we make that work? So we introduced a colour stage. And actually what we have on the colour stage are pods. So the best technicians come and they will in the pod, so everyone can watch, ask questions. It's not ticketed, it's on the show floor. Watch people sectioning, choosing their colour pattern, choosing their colour shades, looking at their their patterns, and asking them, why are you doing that? Why are you sectioning like that? Why did you choose that shade? So it became a real learning, because there is a demand for learning. I think people want education. They want to stay on top of the trends and actually get better at the trends that are not going away. I mean, balayage is not going anywhere, whether people like it or not. There are new versions of balayage, and I think that's really important to keep people coming back, keep them engaged and interested. But actually, and what we did, because we had lots of pods working at the same time, it was never stagnant. It was never just, oh, someone's got a process for 45 minutes, because the next pod was at a different stage, and actually they were rinsing off the colour live. People could watch them tone at the sink, and then they would finish their models and present and talk about why they chose the shades they'd chosen, looking at skin colour, lifestyle, all those kind of things. So it is about constantly looking at new ways to interact. And actually, we've got to make that area bigger, because we couldn't. It just became overcrowded.
Right, okay.
It became swamped. It was difficult for the teams to work.
About smaller groups.
Yeah, smaller groups,
interaction, rather than the big on stage extravaganza.
Absolutely. Okay. And I personally think, and it's something we're looking at now, that there is a demand for that, what I would call more up close and personal education. So it's a smaller group. It's more intimate. You feel more part of it. It's easier to ask questions of the people on stage. Those kind of environments, as opposed to pre-pandemic, we were in a 4,000 seat auditorium, massive stage shows, and rightly, I think we pared that back hugely in 21, because we just weren't sure what was going to happen with audience numbers and stuff. We went up to kind of 1,500 this year and seats, and they did really well. But I think there is a demand for that up close and personal education. And it's a mix, isn't it? You will have people who love learning online, but they probably don't just want to learn online. They will learn online, but they want some real life action where they can see people actually doing the do as they talk the talk.
I think definitely with the creative stuff, from my angle, where I come from, there's a lot of people that are really happy about doing more online in the business context. doing that online, because they can do it in bite-sized pieces. They can do it in their own time. They can repeat it as often as they want, and if you combine it with a live component, whether it's live Facebook groups or live Zoom group coaching calls or whatever.
Absolutely. Business is something not to be overlooked, because we do a business conference at Salon, and you try and get the topics right. And we mixed it up this year and said, actually, we're going to run the business on the 3 days. Previously we'd only ever run it Sunday, Monday, not done the Saturday. And we had a bit of an internal, and I was like, it won't work on Saturday. I don't think it'll work on the Saturday. I hate eating humble pie, Anthony, but absolutely had to, because all of those sessions were busy, Saturday, Sunday and Monday. So I do think there is a real demand for people wanting to, whether it's marketing skills, digital skills, better ROI, recruitment, retention. Everyone's having an issue with teams and staff, and the changing to hybrid working, and people wanting to go freelance and not, self-employed as opposed to on payroll. And those kind of topics. I mean, you're right, there is absolutely demand for that online, and we see that very much with the content on the website. Those are often the most searched content pieces. If you've got an issue about maternity, you're probably not going to flick back through the last 30 issues of Hairdressers Journal, but you might go on the website, put in the search terms maternity law, and there it is. And that's the kind of things that have changed, isn't it? You want that accessible,
that's interesting,
that you can find.
I just want to pick up on, you've touched on a couple of times things around recruitment, when you were talking before about getting the hairdressers to go into schools, etc., and talk about what a great career it is, and now you've just touched on that whole idea of different business models and people wanting to work independent and all that sort of stuff. I often have commented during this sort of series that I'm doing that you have a unique perspective, I think, the media, because they sort of see like every area of the industry, from the manufacturers to the salons and the events, the shows, the awards, which I think is fascinating. What are you seeing around recruitment? What trends are you seeing? Are you seeing or hearing anyone who has some brilliant solutions that are working fantastically well?
I think there's a real mix. You've got some people who absolutely, what works for them is having employed stylists. They reward them very well. They are loyal, and that is absolutely working. But there is also an element, no matter how much you're doing for people, I think what the pandemic did do was make people want this, the work-life balance. And absolutely, I understand why they want that. And if they can't have that flex, then, because then you go to the people who actually are running employed, but they're much more flexible around what they're doing and the hours that people work and the days that people work, through to the other end where you've got salons that are actually offering self-employed stylists the opportunity to stay with them, but work in the space. And then, you've also got kind of I think probably more of what started in America, wasn't it? Where you have the spaces where individual businesses are operating within those spaces, and that's also now in the UK. I think they were probably always coming. I think the pandemic speeded it up. And pre-pandemic, there was a shift towards self-employment and being in charge of your own destiny. And I understand. I can understand that. But there are also still a chunk of people who actually really want to be part of the team and have the security that team may bring with you. And I think what you have to do is be open to all and look at the ways that it works for your business. One size doesn't fit all. People are running very different sizes of business, very different business models. It feels to me like it's settling down in terms of, I think there are big Facebook groups, and it does feel like it's calmed down. I think after the pandemic, when everyone opened, and then it felt like a swathe of people went, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do my thing, my way, my terms, my hours. That seems to have definitely settled, I think. And I think there's had to be a mindset shift for business owners. We've had to do it, in media. People don't want to necessarily be committed to the office 5 days a week. And actually, if the pandemic did nothing else for businesses like ours, you realise that, our team were fantastic. They were working incredibly hard remotely. But then you you miss out on the interaction and those spark of ideas when you hear someone say something in the office. And do you know what I mean? And actually,
Yeah,
I think for new people coming in, they need to absorb what's going on around them to learn and develop. And that's not easy to do on Zoom remotely. And I know I sound very old saying that, but it isn't.
No, yeah, you need a balance between the two. Yeah.
You need a balance of the two. And I think that businesses have had to adapt. I think some were more loath to adapt than others. I think, I'm sure you see that in your line of work. There was a lot of I'm not changing, and if they don't like it, and that's fine. But then you have to be prepared that some people might choose to take a different path. And so long as you're good with that and they're good with that, my view is there's room in this world for all of us. And everybody needs to do what's right for them at the time they do it, so long as they do it in an honourable way. And I think that was the frustration for many, that they felt they'd paid teams through the pandemic, they topped up furlough, and then people didn't come back. Well, that will hurt.
Yeah, definitely.
When you feel when you're running a business and you feel you've done everything in your power to make it as easy for people as possible, and then I suppose it feels. But I think I do, the world's moved on and time is a great healer. I think there is definitely a shift towards more focus on self-employed, and the manufacturers, I think, have shifted too. And you will see this, there's a lot more focus on all areas of the market, not just salons, because I think the latest stats, wasn't it, for the UK anyway, I think 66% of the market was self-employed.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say to you. Yeah, I mean, I last heard 64, but every time I hear it, the number is going north. And in the UK, the self-employed thing, in a lot of salons, you don't necessarily recognize that they're self-employed. Whereas, as you alluded to in the US, there's a lot more of the salon suite business model. So it's very evident that they're independent businesses. Whereas in the UK, it looks like a salon full of people working happily together, but they're actually, 10 individual businesses in their own right. But
absolutely.
That in itself is interesting, because that must have an impact on you, in terms of awards, in terms of, trade fairs and events, etc. Because you're no longer just marketing to one person, i.e. the salon owner, and them putting their hand in their pocket. You're having to sort of reach all of these people that are effectively independent businesses in their own right. So that must present challenges for you.
Yeah, it does. And I think the focus in the last, probably 3 or 4 years has been very much about data, because all businesses now are only as good, whether it's a hairdressing salon, they need the data on their customers to make sure they're coming back, they're getting, they're making contact, they stay in touch with them, they stay loyal, they become that great client. It's no different for us. We have to, you're right, you do have to work harder, because we have to find them, because they're not, as you say, it's not one salon who's got 5 people coming with them or whatever. Social media is a great way of doing that, and we work very hard on our social channels across all channels. Fortunately, but it's not luck, because we work very hard at it. We have we have huge reach, and we do try to engage as much as possible. People message, we direct message back, because that's, there is nothing worse than sending a message and nobody replies. I mean, that's just irritating, whether it's an email, a WhatsApp, or a so there's, but you're right, you have to change, and we've had to adapt to that as well. And it's always looking at new ways, using different methods to target people who fit the persona that we need, to get them to enter the awards, to come to salon, to look at the social channels, to interact with us in some way. And you're always looking at how you can reward the people that interact with you more, so that they feel really special and really part of that community. And I think that will be ongoing forever, and it will continue to change, because the ways in which you reach them will undoubtedly continue to change. But you're right, it's gone are the days of salons marketing was 5 direct mails, and that was and some advertising in the magazine. It's now multi-channel, global, with media partners everywhere who we work with, and using our own channels in very different ways to get to the personas and the different target audiences that we need to get to. So
okay. I have one last question for you, and then we need to wrap up. When you look outside the UK market, and I know you get to go to other countries and awards, etc., and see what's happening, what do you see that you wish we would embrace more in the UK? in
What
any
do I see?
anything, any part of the industry, as to how we work, how we recruit, how we train people, how we run awards, anything at all?
I think there are certainly in some regions, there is no doubt there are phenomenal. I think there are phenomenal hairdressers the world over. They might have a different style, but that's just trends and what happens to be current in that geography as opposed to anything else. I think in some regions, I think it feels to me like the hairdressers are almost more confident than our own UK hairdressers about what they do, who they are, what they stand for, and are more prepared to say, I am, this is who I, do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes here, even the household names here are still on the whole really humble about who that, and it's not about the others aren't humble and they're showy or anything. There just seems to be more confidence in actually standing up and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I am really, really good at it.
Great, that's really
so
good.
And I kind of, I suppose I'm probably a frustrated hairdresser under all that. I want everybody to be really proud of what they do, the craft they work in, and the service and the support that they give to their clients. We alluded to it before. It is so much more than just making people feel good, look good, isn't it? It's about how you make them feel. And hairdressing became the 4th emergency service in the pandemic. We need to hold on to that and remember how valuable the craft is. And I think in some regions they definitely seem to be, I suppose, just a bit more confident that is their position. Whereas I don't think we should. UK hairdressing shouldn't be grateful for that. The pandemic, the media were telling us repeatedly, no one could, if people were honest when they were asked who they wanted to see when we were allowed to see people again, obviously everyone said family because it was the right thing to say, but a very close second was their hairdresser. When I went to get I obviously didn't do anything to my own hair because I wouldn't, and my fringe almost was under my chin by the time I actually got in to see a hairdresser. And when I went to see Darren, I cried with relief. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was just like, oh, thank God for that. We can get back to normal. We can get back. This is getting back to normal. And you don't feel yourself if you think your hair looks crap. I'm going to say it, but you don't feel yourself. And that's not being flippant. It is a huge part of who you are. And I think that's a worldwide thing. I don't think the media, I don't know what the media would like. And I would hope the media all around the world was as supportive in getting salons open. I know some places were even slower to open than the UK, which was really tough. But there's some great work. And one thing I would say, we love sharing that kind of work from around the world. So people have got images and stories and news and they want to then they contact us because we do share stuff from around the world. And some of the work we get sent from Australia, America, absolutely phenomenal. And when we look at the international category, the stuff, the current International Hairdresser of the Year is from Ukraine.
Wow.
Incredible collection she put together.
Fantastic. Good.
So
That's great.
It's about making hairdressing a community that's bigger than just the geography, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So on that note, where can people connect with you on Instagram or website or any other social media channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram is just at Jayne Lewis-Orr and it's Jayne with a Y. So at Jayne Lewis-Orr on Facebook or email. They can get me, which is Jayne, so JAYNE.L@thepbgroup.com. But it's all on if you go to HJI and just email, they'll send the messages through to me. If you just use the generic email and I'll come back. Absolutely. Be great.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll put those links on our website at growmysalonbusiness.com.
Thank you.
And they'll be in the show notes for today's podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast with Jayne Lewis-Orr and have enjoyed it, do me a favor, take a screenshot on your phone, share it to Instagram stories, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Jayne, it's been absolutely wonderful having this opportunity, having a chat to you for the last hour and getting to know you. You floored me right at the beginning when you said you've got two 20-year-old twins. I was like, I didn't know
21-year-old twin boys.
Sons. That's fantastic. So
they are my biggest achievement.
Well, that's some achievement too, I'm sure. So, okay, well, Jayne, thank you once again for being on the show. We really appreciated it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.